Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Medium Porch. I am your host, Lilydale Registered Medium, Kathleen Boldt. And before we get into the thick of things, I want to announce that if you're interested in developing your mediumship as a medium or even for your own spiritual practice, I am setting up a mentorship. And there are plenty of teachers in Lilydale that are teaching this summer and throughout the year. So check out their websites. Also check out the lilydaleassembly.org website, where this summer they're going to be featuring many different teachers. So you can come in and develop and explore this wonderful world of mediumship. So folks, this is our third episode featuring the Lilydale Registered Mediums, where I have invited my peer mediums to join me as a guest on this show. So you have the opportunity of getting to know them in terms of their service and getting to know them better as people. And today's guest is Eileen McClure. And Eileen, welcome for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. This is such a pleasure to not only get to spend time with you, but also the people that in your podcast. So thank you.
And I'd like to bring to mention something that I've encountered knowing you, and it is your generosity. When I became a registered medium a few years ago, I wanted to do my best, obviously, and yet it was my first year. So not a lot of people knew me, not a lot of people knew where I came from, what I did, or that I was even available. And I have to tell the audience that, Eileen, you had been very, very generous. You were sending people my way. You were speaking kindly of my work because you had seen and witnessed my work as a medium. And I just want to thank you again right here publicly, because it showed me a lot about who you are and how generous you are. And so if I was there wanting to go to a reading, I would definitely choose an opportunity to sit with you for those reasons. What is it about your mediumship that you feel you offer people that is special to you, that will be special to them?
As I've done this work, and this is my 21st year,
Oh, wow.
I know, I retired from one job. Now I can retire from another years to come. But I think what I really do offer is I have a grandmotherly warmth. Okay.
And you do, yeah.
People really, I don't think they really understand their need for acceptance. No matter what they say, no matter how their life was. But it's like it's a safe zone for them to open up, to explore, for me to give messages to them. But hopefully at the end of the reading, there has been some emotional growth. Okay, that's what I want to do is to provide that safe space. And I just think just the features that God has given me, this is not at all anything that I have developed, allows them to just feel very relaxed in my reading room.
Now that makes sense, because you graduated from the Kent State University in Ohio with a master's degree in guidance counseling. So not only is it part of who you are, it is also your training to be in good counsel, to hold sacred space, to retain privacy. And now you just slipped in there, what you said earlier there, you just slipped in that you didn't develop this. Now you did develop it, but you didn't start off being a medium in your life. So I know in our earlier conversation, you said something about being surprised about how this all came about. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that too, and we'll come back to more details about your reading in a sec.
Well, and I know I'm older. Okay, I am a grandmother to many people, but back in the 60s when I was graduating from high school, there was only a few areas that were appropriate for a woman to go into, and one of those was teaching and or nursing. And so I did go into teaching and had a beautiful time with it. Please, I retired as a school psychologist, but I love the teaching part actually. But what I didn't know is I always had in my mind a psychologist, and I thought that's what I was meant to be. So out of the umbrella of teaching, school psychologists met that ability. Plus, for me to keep my retirement. Okay, and so that's where I went. And in 1978, I lost my husband, tragically, and he started to come to me, and I'm like, oh, what is this? Okay, I had no idea what this is all about, and so through that development and going to a medium in my area, Greg Keene, which is also in Lilydale. He lived in Girard at the time. I lived in Warren, and I just started to go. And it's funny because, I never went anywhere by myself. I always dragged my sister. And and so, we're very good Catholic girls. And she just looked at me and she goes, do you realize that this could potentially change where we will be in our future for the rest of our life? And I said, but where else would you like to share that space with but with me? And so we went to see Greg, and it changed my life. It brought me to Lilydale. Okay, and little by little I started to realize that it's not psychologist I was supposed to do, and please excuse the term, but the best that I knew at the time was psychic.
Right.
Okay,
And that's
and
in both words, isn't it?
yes, yes, and it's right in there. But again, I don't know why, but I've always taken the long road. I don't know about you, Kathleen, but
I actually
you
have
know,
to.
instead of going through or a straight line, I've always taken the road less traveled. And on the way to doing that, I love school, so I kept going to school
Sure.
and getting other degrees. And then when I didn't want to do that anymore, I said, I'm going to take a class in Lilydale. I go to one of the schools. And that's when I realized what I was really meant to be.
Right. And you went to Fellowships of the Spirit, graduating from the School of Spiritual Healing and Prophecy. We
Yes,
have that in common. But you also went to the Institute of Light in Cleveland, Ohio, and you
yes.
studied under Dr. Warren Grossman. I think a lot of people are familiar with fellowships. Tell us a little more about that experience at the Institute of Light.
Well, again, I do take the long road, but the fun thing about the Institute of Light with Dr. Warren Grossman, it was closer for me. Now, that's still a 2 hour, almost a 2 hour drive, or maybe an hour and a half, but you had to meet at daybreak.
Oh, right. Like the
So,
Eastern teachings would make us all wake up early and sit in sadhana.
yeah. So again, I'm like, okay, I can do this. So I would go and have the class with Dr. Grossman, a beautiful healer, and he is still doing that. And
Mhm.
he has taught up at Lilydale a few times. Okay, and I went up and he would show different healing techniques in doing this, and I just kind of noticed that, like, I was seeing people in a past life clothing, and it was like, oh. And so I would give what I was getting, and he would just say, Eileen, this is a healing class. And so I didn't undo it, but I tried to figure out how come that past experience somewhat at times affected what they're going through in this life. And that was helpful to me. That was help, and that was like a 2 year program. I loved it. I loved it. And when it was done, you sit back and you think, now, what was wrong with me? Getting up at 3 in the morning
Oh,
to drive to Cleveland and to be there for a class that started at dawn. But I did it.
good
I
for
did.
you.
Mhm.
Yeah, it takes a lot of determination, and very often, especially at the beginning of our spiritual path, right? There's that sense of being magnetized to something, right?
Mhm.
And it makes it
Mhm.
so much easier to show that dedication, to show up for it, because there's that enthusiasm, the beginner's mind, right?
Yes,
The beginner's
yes,
mind. Yeah.
yes.
So,
And go ahead.
no, no, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, there isn't any part of my learning spiritually that I would ever take away. They've
Oh,
all been a benefit, just a benefit.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so, with that background, how do you see it? Just curious, as you're doing readings now, is there ways that you can see that informs how you present your readings, so that that are listening will recognize how that comes through and how they can gain benefit from that?
Well, some of the things that he taught was he was really into half of the body is male and half of the body is feminine, and so he really, and where are you coming from, and so a lot of times when someone will just say, it seems like it's the left side of my body that always has something wrong with it, or I need to fine tune, or I need to do, and then my brain just naturally goes over, and it's like, okay, what side is that, and what are they stifling, or what are they bringing forward, those kind of things. But he also was into natural grounding, and I don't want to say a meditation, but grounding, where we would go out and be with trees, and because where he lived in Cleveland, believe it or not, was very wooded, and so he and we learned the different energies of trees, of flowers, of rocks, and it was beautiful. So a lot of times I will take, after we're done, I will take people in my garden and
Love your garden.
just walk through and do it slowly so that they can release the energy.
Nice.
So,
That's brilliant. Especially, because sometimes there's real healing. Well, of course there's real healing, but there's extreme emotion that comes up in a reading, right? And I know I had a reading once where I was at a psychic fair doing it, and this woman, I mean, she just was beside herself, and I was doing my best to console her, and she was just in that place, and she got up and bolted out the door, and I felt so bad because I wasn't able to provide her even an environment in which she could feel comfortable, because we were at a psychic fair, which can be rather invasive, especially for an introvert, right? So it's beautiful that you offer that. And by the way, I do love your garden. It's all those cosmos flowers in the front bring so much joy. It's just a beautiful thing. I've always noticed and appreciated your garden.
Thank you.
On a side note. So yes, doing your work through the healing. Thank you for offering that to me, because as a fellow medium, it is so important that we give our most wonderful gifts and share them. So thank you for doing that for people. Yeah.
And sometimes when, we're human, and sometimes I'm just not in the space to have a busy day, but I have a busy day. And before I start, I will dig in the garden. It just puts me back where I need to be, and it just grounds me and anchors me so that I can be what they need.
Right. And the thought I just had was the holy is in everything.
Yes.
Right. And that's one of our principles as spiritualists. It's the first one, right? Basically Mother, Father, God, however you word that, it's like the idea that there is a divine consciousness in all things. Yeah. So that's beautiful. I'm so glad you're able to do that. Now, you mentioned past life, right? And that relevance to today. Do you work with that still when you're working with your clients?
Sometimes sometimes they'll ask, okay, and sometimes it just pops up. I rather have it pop up, okay, instead of forcing it through. It's not something that I do all the time. So you can't say I'm going to get a reading with Eileen and it's going to be a past life reading. That's not the case. But sometimes their past life is needed to get clarity on why their life is where it's at, or the mistakes they have, not mistakes, but the choices that they have made. We all get that soul recognition. I remember when I met my husband that had passed, when I met him for the first time, I came home and looked at my mom and said, I met the man I'm going to marry. And she goes, oh, you crazy girl. And 14, I was 14. And I said, no, Mom, I'm going to marry him. There was that consciousness, that soul recognition that I had when I saw him the first time. And we all get it. Sometimes, and I think when people say, I don't know, I knew it wasn't the right decision to make, but I was just drawn. And a lot of times we have past issues we need to resolve. And so, we need to cherish those things, but they also need to understand that this wasn't their first go around. You
Yeah.
know, that they had been with them before, and you know, and how that experience shaped where they were now and why they're stuck and they
Yeah.
can't move on. My point of view.
Yeah. And I'm with you on that. I feel like the uh, spiritual consciousness that you bring to a problem, say, right, where you're stuck or you've encountered people that are difficult to work with, if you have that spiritual understanding that there's an opportunity here, there's an opportunity to step back and see the circumstance as an opportunity to resolve or work something through or come into your best self, that distance can be so helpful to your own progression on the earth plane before we even pass and continue our progression there. Would you agree
Yes,
with?
I do agree with that, very much so. And it's very rewarding to not direct, because that's not our job, is to direct, but to give them some ideas that this could be, you know, there could be another meaning here. Okay, and take a look at it that way, and what growth can you take from this interaction, and how can it change, and how can it make you a better person, instead of thinking, you know, poor me. And don't uh, please don't take the victim, because if you're
Oh
a
yes, no,
victim,
that makes things difficult for everyone.
yes, you know, if you're a victim, I always say you don't have to change, because it's everyone else's fault.
Right.
And
And,
so
and and you don't realize you're making your life more difficult.
exactly.
You're
Hmm.
you're missing opportunities, you're not progressing. So jumping back to it for a second there, I had the thought that there are some people that don't agree or believe in, and I know you said this is your take on it, they don't agree or believe in past lives. Now,
Hmm.
I've wrestled with that because I've done hypnosis in past life. And so one of my thoughts was, well, wait a minute, even if we don't know the absolute answer about, past life regressions and return and reincarnation and all that, we can also think of it, especially if you're presenting it the way it sounds like you're presenting it, as in a story. And if you
Hmm.
look at a lot of cultures and human past spiritual practices, story is a way to understand where you are and where you're going, and
Hmm.
also who you are and how all the puzzle pieces, like you said, with nature fit together. So
Hmm.
that's one way that I always bring my own doubt when it comes to past life to bear, because it's like, oh, you know what? Does it matter the fact of whether this really happens, or do I have some rich story here that I can
Hmm.
share with someone that helps them on their way?
And I always tell people past lives do not have a bearing on this life, okay? Because it's your decisions now that will take you where
Mhm.
you want to go.
Right.
But sometimes it just explains that little thing that you just can't get out of your head. But it's not to guide your life now. You
Right.
know, if I was with this person in a past life, I need to seek them out and do all of that. We need to continue. No, no, but it's for you to understand,
Right.
because every minute of our experiences create who we are, but every minute of even our past lives also creates who we are.
Right. So, as a medium, do you work with a lot of evidence? Are you more conversational, or do you do what's needed in the moment?
I always I try to make Lily Bell happy. Okay, and so I always start out my readings with evidential. Okay, and we start from there, and usually then they will give me where they want to be. Now my readings are about a half hour. Okay, so I'd say a good 15 minutes of that is in talking about their deceased loved ones, which people need to know. I mean,
Sure.
people they want that information, and that's one thing I love about you is your evidential mediumship. It's beautiful to watch you work. It really is, and so I try to give the evidential first, and then I try to also then go to the meaning of that. How does that? How do these experiences, these people, where now does it take you? And so I end on that note.
Oh, I
Okay.
love that. I love that continuity that
Hmm.
you're helping them coalesce and consolidate all that information that does
Yes.
come through. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And there are some people who just, I don't want to hear from my dead people. And I said, well, my way is saying is I get my information from them. So I can't skip over them or we don't have a reading. Okay. And and that is where I get my information. So if there is information past, present, future, it's coming from them, not from anything else. Mm-hmm.
Now, I get some people occasionally that come in and they want to hear about spirit guides.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say, in your experience of doing readings, you work with your team?
I do work with my team, okay, and maybe not as much as I should, but I get them in there, and I am so appreciative because I can't imagine how difficult for them to see me making the decisions that I've made throughout my life, and they're going, "Oh, yoy," okay. So, but yes, I work with my guides, but I always tell people when they say, "What does my guide look like? What's their name?" You see, to me, that's a personal process. Okay, it's not my guide is it's like it's like a mother. Okay, they're there for you from your first breath to your last breath. And so I always tell them, I give them a little meditation practice and tell them to do it for a good month, and then tell their guide, on this day I would like to meet you. And so I tell them it's a serious thing,
Mhm.
for them and for you. And so I'm just happy that they stuck with me. And I'm excited when people come back and say, I did what you said. And you're right. I got to see them. And I always tell them, please trust what you see and trust what you hear, because a lot of times they're just different.
Exactly.
They're so, but I just give them this little homework, call it. And if you do this and they need a date that you're going to open the door and you're going to see them and do this, the month gives them, where are they in the commitment? And are they going to do their daily little journey? And then at the end of it, what do they see and what do they hear is personal to them.
Sure.
Do you agree that it's very personal?
Oh,
I
absolutely. I do the same thing, in the sense of, especially when they focus too much on the name, right?
Yes.
And I
Mhm.
have, you had this experience where a spirit guide comes in and I take a moment to, respect that question, and I open up to offer the name, and even myself, when I asked, let's use me myself as an example here. When I first started my mediumship, I was automatic writing,
Mhm.
or actually, forgive me, writing inspirationally, right?
Mhm.
And so I was writing inspirationally, and I wanted to know whose voice this was, because this wasn't my voice. And so I, in communication, I was like, okay, who is this I'm speaking with? And I got one of those things where it's like, it doesn't matter. And with
Mhm.
my whole being, I knew that was true, because who was asking for the name in my case was my ego. I
Mhm.
wanted to know that I could label this, put it somewhere, and reserve it as, oh, I have a guide. I mean, my purpose in that moment. That doesn't mean everybody's asking for that reason.
Mhm.
But my purpose in that moment, in my early days, was I needed to know that I was real as a medium, and that I had a name for somebody, right? And that they just put me on the spot, and whoever that guide was, and I know them by signature, by
Mhm.
essence. I know they're still with me, but it was very paternal and disciplinatory, if that's a word. The way
Mhm.
they said to me, "No, you don't need to know the name."
Yeah. Or when people come and say, I have there's a word I want you to recall, and then I know you're real. And you see, that automatically takes me away from my spirit self and puts me into anxiety, into my cognitive self. And
Mm,
then it's like, please, sometimes I'll just say, I'm not the right medium for you.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, we
And
have
and
to do that
and
sometimes.
and because usually in my process, if they allow me, that word will be divulged in conversation. Okay. But when you put me right on the spot, I mean, I'm just like anybody else. It's like, the whole dictionary all of a sudden is in front of you, and you're like, which word is it,
Yeah.
and so I say, please, don't do that. And what a way to start a reading. So, but if they allow the unfoldment, it'll happen.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm interested that you said you're not the medium for them, because it shows that they're processing the information in a way that they've locked down on one specific thing rather than being open to the essence of the whole person as they
Hmm.
show up in the room with us. So,
Hmm.
yeah. So, do you have any wonderful anecdotes that you want to share with us in terms of times past that show the beautiful wonder of the work we do as mediums?
um you know um it's my story. When my husband passed away, it was very close to Christmas, and of course the Christmas tree was up, and after a while, when he started to fade and wasn't with me physically anymore, we would communicate through the Christmas tree. And so two blinks was a yes, and one blink was a no, and so we had this communication going for years, for years. I mean, I actually had to put the tree in the basement so people wouldn't think I was crazy, and we would, communicate through that. But I've had such beautiful nudges to kind of show me, in retrospect, I see them. But as I was living them, it was like, what's that all about? And I just kept plodding through traditional school. And but now I am so relaxed when spirit comes in and just gives me those little nudges. And sometimes I still say, I'm sorry, but I don't want to do that. And I know I have a mountain to climb. Okay. But that's my choice. That is my choice. But my life in many ways has been driven or guided more through spirit and me hanging on for dear life than it ever was for me having a plan. I don't know about your life, but mine was, it unfolded, and it's like, what do I do with that? What do I do with that? What do I do with that? And so now that I'm older, I just kind of sit back and say, what do I do with that will be revealed. And one of the things that I always love is, you know, until you love unconditionally without any expectations back, then you haven't loved. So a lot of people will say, yes, I'll do that for you, but and they really want something in return. They want another, for you to do a generosity for them. And what I do from my heart. I don't want anything back for it. It's my gift to you. Do with it as you may. But love unconditionally, people. That's where it's at. Don't make preconceived judgments. We don't know what these people have been through.
When we release ourselves to giving that love unconditionally to others,
Mhm.
it's so you don't know what's coming back, which is the cool thing,
Yes.
right? Because such
Yeah.
amazing things can come your way, and it may not come immediately, and it may not come at all in the literal sense,
Mhm.
but you feel better. Just the act of doing that,
Yes.
tapping into a part of yourself.
Yes.
Love it.
And I've done that throughout my life, not only with my time, because I think the best gift anyone can give you is their time. Okay. And to sit down, make eye contact, and to listen, and to listen. And we don't do that today. Electronics and everything has gotten our brains so busy that at times people forget. And when they see you sitting looking at them and staying right with them and listening to their story and their happiness and their pain and all of it, and telling them it's okay, and you're going to get through this. We can never underestimate our power of creating hope. And that to me is what it's all about. Mhm.
For the mediums that are listening in, especially the developing ones, how do you go about continuing your own development, your own unfolding spiritually? What do you do for that?
I do love nature. Okay, and so not only in Lilydale do I garden, but I garden in my home here in Ohio. And I also live near a creek, and me and the creek have a very personal interaction together. I do meditate, where I do sit and meditate, but I also look at meditations as going to one of my absolute happy doings, which is gardening. Okay, and making sure the creek is void of rubbish that people throw in, and doing everything that I can to make it a healthy place for my crawfish and everything else that's in there. And so part of mine is touching nature, being on the ground. I don't wear gloves. I suppose I probably should, but actually feeling that dirt, and that is my way. And when I'm tired, I just lean up against a tree.
Oh, I love that, don't
I,
you?
I
That's
lean up against it and just say, okay, as I get older, I need more of their energy. And, it's like, just, fill me up again so I could continue. And nature is beautiful. Flowers are beautiful. And even though my cosmos might all look alike, they're each individually very different,
hmm
just like we are. Mhm. So when you give nature their credence and their value, how could you not give it to people as well? Mhm. Just my take on it.
Yeah, and clearly you're someone who is able to sit with someone and see who they really are, not a behavior, not, those things that show up within us that are our ways of coping with something that is troubling us, right? You look
Mhm.
past that. And that's that grandmotherly part, that's that unconditional part, that's that generosity. Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so I absolutely love what I do. I am so glad, which is usually how my life goes, is I found out the reward of it as I've gotten older. But it's better to at least know that the reward is there than to never have felt it. But this, of all the jobs I've had, is probably the most um, serious,
Hmm.
because you are when they leave. I mean, I know what it was like before I was a medium, and I hung on every word, every single word. And back then you got a cassette, and it's like, please keep playing, and how important it is, and how you have that brief moment to affect someone's life in a good way.
Right.
Don't take it for granted.
And so that would make it very important for each and every one of us to do our own personal work so that
Yes,
we come clear, clean, and with the right intentions to this work.
yes, very much so.
Mm.
And you're going to do the personal work whether you choose to take time out to do it, or life will give it to you. Okay, but
True.
it's nice to have a heads up and to understand. And I think that's the beauty of age. It's like, bring it on. I've been through this, and this, and it hasn't killed me yet. And so, I'm okay with it. Life is a learning experience. When we quit changing, when we quit learning, we're not here. And I still like it here.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, you've
So
got you've got the whole earth to talk back with, so
yes,
so much to like, right?
yes, very much so.
Lovely.
But
I feel like I want to keep talking to you, but I've run out of words. You've said such beautiful things here at the end. I'm like, oh, I just want to feel this stuff.
life is beautiful, and it is what you make it. Okay, so you know, whenever you have your aha moment, just be happy it came. Not say it should have happened a long time ago. Just be happy that it finally came.
Right. And
Mhm.
even if it does come later, like in my case, I started doing mediumship service later. But
Mhm.
when I look back as a medium now with the knowledge I have about this process and how it works and how spirit has been with us, I can see all kinds of evidence that I wasn't supposed to do it any sooner than I did it. And
No.
yet I was cross training the whole time that I was doing these other
Mhm.
things. I was developing. I was
Yeah.
ready to be of service. So yeah.
And, when I was teaching, I was really an intuitive teacher.
I
I
bet.
knew
Yeah.
I knew when behaviors were going to happen. When I was a school psychologist, I was really more of an intuitive understanding of the person so that the teachers could understand what that little person is about. When I was doing individual counseling, I was more, again, of an intuitive counselor. I never knew that. But in retrospect, I see where if I get out of the way, spirit does pretty well with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So life is a joy, and I'm glad I lived long enough to have appreciated it.
Well, Eileen, how do people get a hold of you if they want to book a reading for this summer or even up until the summer? You're available year round, correct?
I am. I do live in Ohio off season. I wished it was Florida, but it isn't. But my telephone number. I'm still the old fashioned way. I don't
Okay.
do. I do email and or phone calls. 330-240-4259 is my cell, and I know on in Lily Dale's catalog, my email is in there, and you can email. So that's how people get a hold of me. I usually try to keep several appointments open every day so that our the people that are walking
I was going
around,
to ask you about that. Yeah, perfect.
yeah, it can get a reading. I don't try to fill up. And it's like sessions full, sessions full. There are days that does happen, but usually I will save 3 or 4 for that day.
Right. Yeah,
Mhm,
I think a lot of people from times past expected that they could just walk in, and it's a little trickier
mhm,
nowadays. So it's really nice
mhm,
to know that you leave those couple open for
mhm.
the walk-ins and the people
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
were drawn to you by spirit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
And your address is listed in the catalog. Did you want to state what that is so people can note that down?
I'm I always say it. I live on the best street in Lilydale, number 6, 2nd Street. Okay.
Yeah.
I call it Mediums Row. I think we have about 6 or 7 mediums on that street.
I never counted. That's great.
Yeah, so there's quite a few of us, and it's to me a very friendly street. Mhm,
And of course, people that are mediums are definitely keeping up their flowers and making their porches look pretty.
mhm,
So that's a great place to walk then, especially if you can get a reading when you're walking along and just drop
mhm.
in. Yeah.
And or have a seat on the porch if you need to get out of the sun. You're more than welcome.
Oh, it's
Mm,
lovely. It's lovely. I am
mhm.
so grateful that you joined me today and that
Thank
you were able to present yourself to our listeners in a way that shows your charm, your warmth, and who you are. It's wonderful.
thank you.
Thanks,
And
Eileen.
it's a pleasure. It is you know, how could you not like talking about yourself? So, so thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank
Okay.
you so much. I look forward to seeing you this summer for sure, and if not
Yes.
sooner. I don't know. Are you going in for the eclipse?
I'm having surgery, so that will be 8 days out of surgery, and I doubt that. But
Okay,
it goes over Trumbull County in Ohio as well,
mhm,
so I will get the full benefits of the eclipse. Yeah.
beautiful. I want to just say to our listeners and viewers, thank you for joining us. Thank you for hearing Eileen's story, and tune in a couple of weeks. Thank you for joining us, Eileen. We're going
You're
to
welcome.
actually next week we're doing weekly because we have so many people before
Mhm.
season. So tune in next week and we will have another medium. But today I am so grateful for Eileen, and listeners, may you walk in the light of truth, may you dance with the spirits, and may you always trust the whispers of your own heart.
Very
Thank
nice.
you.
Thank you.
Stay well.
You too. Okay. And how do we do?